Hello, thank you for tuning in to my official YouTube channel, Reverend MeeLing, also known as Reverend Susie MeeLing, Lady Dori, Belle. Been known by a few names. So, I remembered, I guess is what it is as far as my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. So, years ago, back in 2011, I was at a ClubFEM event in Dallas, Fort Worth area. Specifically in Fort Worth, though, because it was at Maitresse Renee and Jason's house in Fort Worth. And there were a few different things that were going on. And one of the particular things I was reminded of in a different way a while ago in 2019 when I had seen an old friend from Jim's restaurant. And she had told me about this movie that she saw. And in this movie, there were these females who did stuff to these high power guys and took their money and a few other things. I can't remember what, but it had to do with a strip club. And so just as I was getting ready to go to sleep to prepare for my trip, nonetheless, I remembered that there was a point in time when Maitresse Renee and Jason had discussed how there were certain clients of theirs who they would roll in a carpet, and it was all supposedly what they were into. And when they told me this, I said, that just doesn't seem right. That doesn't, I mean, I understand that there are different types of guys that are into different types of things. I get that. That does not seem like something that people would be particularly into. And Maitresse Renee and Jason had told me that they knew guys who they would essentially, and they were clients in the Professional Dominatrix stuff, where they would essentially take a bunch of medication and then get rolled up into carpets and then put in the trunk of cars and then go to Renee's and Jason, or Jason and Renee's, to be involved with that sort of stuff. And then afterwards they would get paid. And at that time, Maitresse Renee and Jason also knew Patrick Kennedy. And Patrick Kennedy, my ex-boyfriend, obviously at this point, the one who had put the shotgun in my face, the loaded one, he had at one point in time worked for Bank of America in downtown Dallas, and he was head of security there before he wound up being head of security at Deloitte. And there were some guys who showed up to the apartment in Irving who had asked Patrick Kennedy a bunch of questions. I stayed out on the back patio because I kind of figured it had nothing to do with me. And if it was important for me to answer any questions, I'd have been asked questions. And not being rude to those guys, I'm sure that they probably didn't know at that time. That is what it is in that regard. However, if they had asked me, I would have told them, no, yeah, he had told me to look on FetLife to see certain pictures as far as people being hung in shibari on a structure in the front of the downtown Bank of America in Dallas. Though I wasn't asked about that. I was just asked to stay outside on the back patio. Okay. You know, I get a bunch of stuff going on. Okay. However, my cell phone number was the one that he had called from the Bank of America Dallas head of security landline. And so when I was told about that and how he had to pay charges or something like that, or he was being questioned, I had told him, well, you should pay that. It'll show, the company that you are apologetic and, fix what you can fix and that sort of stuff. And he did, and then he got fired. And then that would be when the questioning occurred shortly after moving to the Irving area of Texas because of the stuff going on with my daughter and trying to make sure everything was okay, along with as far as my son was concerned. And later, he had been a drive-around security officer for certain neighborhoods in Irving. He didn't say where, though. And then he started working for Deloitte. Now, just before the aspects in reference to the shotgun in the face from Patrick Kennedy to me, I had contacted Deloitte and spoken with a female security individual and explained certain things in regards to the barn and trash. And I'll just leave it at that for the understanding in that regard. I am that individual who called. Obviously, I guesstimate that's been figured out by now. Nonetheless, I did not put two and two together, probably because I'm really bad at math. Sorry, I know that's a bad joke. Nonetheless, Maitresse Renee and Jason had been wanting me to work for Maitresse Renee, and that was just, obviously that did not occur, and obviously that did not happen, and I did have issues with that. However, Patrick Kennedy also wanted me to become a professional dominatrix, and there were issues in that regard of accepting the fact that I am not a professional dominatrix. I don't have a problem with the profession at all. It's just not something I can personally do. It's nothing against the profession, and that was an issue between Maitresse Renee and I by a lot. Nonetheless, when I had heard about that, and at one point in time, Patrick Kennedy, as well as Phillip Omstead, who one point in time worked for Chase Bank, were at and it wasn't a ClubFEM event, it was just one of the party events. Can't remember what month it was, but they were discussing certain things, and it was just one of those, well, what's going on? And, oh, no, we're just joking around, Lady Dori Belle. We know you're a goody two-shoes. You're too good to, be a part of what we're joking about. And I asked what they meant, and they were discussing more along the lines of the stuff in reference to that movie that I was told about by my old friend Stephanie at Jim's restaurant in 2019. And I was told it was a joke, and I know that I've said there's truth behind every joke. Some truth, not necessarily all, but nonetheless. And so I kind of was dealing with a little bit of stuff at the time, not trying to make anything more difficult or cause any problems. However, I did not realize that they were planning, legitimately planning that sort of stuff. And so if there was the reality of that, which at that time I didn't realize. I do apologize. I know that probably doesn't mean really much in certain ways. However, yes, I did hear those discussions in person. And when the shotgun in the face and the end of the relationship and that whole thing occurred, obviously I moved and left that relationship. And, continued doing what I could as far as my son and my daughter, as best as I could after what was going on in reference to my daughter. And so I knew that they were attempting to get me to be a professional dominatrix, and I wasn't interested, and they had a problem with that. I mean, even Phillip Omstead had a problem with that. Phillip Omstead had wanted to become a power couple. I was one of those. With you? What? First off, what is a power couple? And second, who are you to ask me that? And then it was explained to me what a power couple was, and no, definitely not with him. Nonetheless, in that regard, Phillip Omstead had discussed multiple aspects in regards to having access to various bigger businesses of Chase banking, clients' credit cards, and the aspects in reference to him getting along with Maitresse Renee and Jason, and then him introducing me to Patrick over time, and both Phillip Omstead and Patrick Kennedy wanting me to be a professional dominatrix, which, no, obviously. Nonetheless, again, not in any offense towards the profession at all, just that's not what I feel comfortable with. That's nothing offense towards that. The aspects, though, of the kidnapping thing, I don't know if that's an issue that needed clarification. And then also, there was an evening, I can't remember what evening it was. However, it was probably about a month or two before Jason had proposed to Renee, or Maitresse Renee. And I was at the event. It was the night of the Tea Party. Not the political Tea Party, the Tea Party event at ClubFEM. In reference to at Maitresse Renee and Jason's house in Fort Worth. And at that particular event, first there was the Tea Party thing, and then the second aspect was I had taken care of a wound for one of the guys. He had actually made a bag for me. I had gotten the fabric, and he sewed it together for me and made the organizing pockets and stuff like that. And he had come up to me after the playing aspect and showed me a wound, and I had done what I could and made the recommendation for him to get seen by a doctor in that regard, because Maitresse Renee had used an actual whip without a cracker on it, just an actual animal whip, and had taken out a large piece of skin from his rib cage. And after that particular evening, after he left and after a few other things, Maitresse Renee and Jason had asked me if I had wanted to go to a strip club with them and I could make some extra cash. And I was like, I don't feel comfortable with what you are describing to me. I didn't go into details as far as like having known females who do exotic dancing at the time. I hadn't gone into having been to Palazzio's a whole bunch of times after having gone to All Stars. I didn't discuss having not only that in regards, but getting along with the bouncers, getting along with the house moms, getting along with the cocktail waitresses, the getting along with the dancers, as well as getting along with the manager in the various locations, on top of getting along with the DJs. And so just that being told to me that they were going to go to I think it was the lodge, which ironically, Patrick Kennedy had been moonlighting as a private security officer in reference to walking some of the exotic dancers to their cars at night. And I had simply said, no. I didn't explain all those points because I kind of figured it made sense to not go into their business and then take away money from all of those individuals. And I also got along with the bartenders too. However, usually the cocktail waitresses were the ones who got me my coffee. That being said, if that is of importance in various ways, I did not know that at the time, or when I wound up in Washington State. And so I figured I'd just clarify that real quick, because if there are litigations that are requiring that additional testimony stuff, well, there you go. I do apologize for not knowing sooner. I think I wrote about it somewhere after that. Nonetheless, the aspects of I did tell Maitresse Renee and Jason that was a really bad idea. And the what was told to me was I could get $500 in cash and then splitting of tips. That's what I was told. And that wasn't, not that I didn't need the cash, in regards to assisting what was going on as far as my son and my daughter after what happened to my daughter. It was more along the lines of the short-term aspect of that wasn't going to assist the long-term. And not only that, the aspects of the different stuff in reference to the legalities in that regard. Plus, then there's also the aspects of being medically retired from the Army and that. And so, if that's important, if I was just asked, I would have talked about it much quicker. I understand that sometimes, like, investigations, there are guys who have to word things correctly or a specific way to not lead the testimony sort of thing. However, I guess I'm not the typical witness. And so, that sort of, I get that that's kind of a little bit difficult. And I'm not trying to be difficult. I do not do things to be difficult at all. Just my life is difficult enough as it is. I know I'm not the only one. However, in that regard, I would guesstimate it probably would have been easier if that was allowed. I understand that that's probably not necessarily allowed. However, kind of similar to certain other aspects, if that was allowed, at least for me, probably would have gotten the answers quicker. did not mean to drag that out. So, in that regard, I guess, since Jason is from Louisiana, I don't know if that has anything to do with certain things in conjunction with my ex-sister-in-law, Mary Evongelina Nichols-Osteen, and that whole thing, because Maitresse Renee and Jason had not been really, at least as far as I'm concerned, I'm sure they were known elsewhere. However, I didn't actually know them until about a year after going to Georgia for the vacation for my children, my niece and I, and then Florida afterwards. And Mary Evongelina Nichols-Osteen was born and raised in Louisiana before moving to Fort Worth afterwards in the state of Texas as a teenager, and then going to Georgia. That being said, if that was hypothetically any connecting points, then in that regard, well, that would probably have to do with Mary Evongelina Nichols-Osteen being upset with the fact that I didn't play along with her game in reference to essentially defrauding the United States of America's armed forces or government, because she wanted to claim a whole bunch of lies as truth as far as my dead ex-husband, her dead brother, and I gave back the Bronze Star that was wrongly awarded to the colonel that had been stationed in Iraq that actually knew the aspects of my now dead ex-husband. So if that was something that Mary Evongelina Nichols-Osteen happened to be bitter about, as she was when I knew her in 2009, that's just difficult to even. And so, however, she viewed her baby brother to be more important than other things, despite being informed that the Chief Warrant Officer 3 at the E5 infantry funeral for her dead brother / spiritual husband had informed her that he had, meaning my dead ex-husband, had stolen valor and had pinned a bunch of medals onto his dress blues, that I had to stop the discussion because my ex-sisters-in-law, both of them, as well as my ex-mother-in-law, went to go attack the Chief Warrant Officer 3, and I was like, no, I didn't allow that to happen, which was another bone of contention for them against me, because I wouldn't allow them to attack the Chief Warrant Officer 3 for telling the truth. And so, while I understand that's a bit of a lot in that regard, hopefully that assists with clarifying certain things and getting the justice needed in that regard. And so, and if I'm not mistaken, Maitresse Renee and Jason had boasted about going to events in Florida as well, and I had looked at going to Florida with my son after, several months in regards to the initial signing of the paperwork. And I was, hoping and wishing that my ex-sister-in-law, Mary Evongelina Nichols-Osteen, her, having been in Georgia, Florida's closer to Georgia, and so not being in the state of, but closer. So, however, I'm sure that wasn't considered as important at the time, not forgetting the aspects of the scuba diving stuff at all. However, geographically would have made sense for a multitude of reasons. Nonetheless, if hypothetically my ex-sisters-in-law, on top of Maitresse Renee and Jason, on top of a whole bunch of others, had made false claims in that regard, it's not like my actions haven't proven that I've done everything I possibly could. And not only that, I mean, each and every residential treatment center that my daughter had been in, I had moved closer to. So if, because of the aspects that the CPS workers Child Protective Service workers had told me in reference to requesting that from Mary Evongelina Nichols-Osteen, that was technically proof of me going forward with that. However, then the events at the Cowboys Dance Hall issue, the Stody LaRue concert, being targeted and all that. So, hopefully that clarifies things and makes things more simplistic to understand in various ways. And then in a completely off-topic aspect, before I end this particular video broadcast, the irony of Adonai and the aspects of the words and having to relearn things, and signs are technically considered advertisements, and having to add things together despite that whole aspect of having gone from college algebra with trigonometry and calculus to second grade math, and having to relearn colors in medical hold unit after my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, and having to be taught how to count all over again. And then in one final aspect in regards to one of the colors that I have used to create my hair color being magenta, and my son and my daughter absolutely adored that show, Blue's Clues, which I'll leave that at that. And you guys have a good one. Make sure to comment, like, and share to my official YouTube channel. And have a good one.